He was Connor Mitchell, 42 years old, director of strategy at a marketing agency in Houston. A predictable life, six-figure salary, imported car, house in River Oaks, everything anchored in security. The illusion collapsed when his younger brother Blake asked to move in. Blake was Connor's opposite, a failed musician, eternally chasing the next big idea and the next loan. Connor paid. Blake moved in. Connor didn't know what everyone else saw. His wife Ashley, the life of every party, had been having an affair with Blake for 3 years. His friends knew. His mother knew. Even his secretary knew. Connor was the only one still in the dark about his own tragedy. When he found out walking in on them in bed, Ashley felt no regret. Her confession hit like a punch. "You were never loved, Connor. You were a retirement plan. I was waiting for someone who actually felt things." Blake is an artist, not a spreadsheet. Connor signed the divorce papers and left the house. He disappeared into the Texas Hill Country, buying a farm with land as dry as his future and almost no money left. 5 years later, fate had done its own accounting. Blake was in prison for copyright fraud. Ashley had nowhere to live. She'd lost all the money from the mansion sale and her millions of social media followers, so she wasn't an influencer anymore. She'd become socially invisible, and Connor? Connor had become a millionaire. But not the way you'd think. It was a quiet kind of justice. Connor Mitchell woke at 5:30 a.m. His internal clock, shaped by years of corporate discipline, didn't accept failure. His life was engineered. Every minute, every dollar, every interaction was planned. Director of strategy at a marketing agency, he wasn't charming, but he was efficient. His greatest vanity was the absence of surprises. Ashley was the constant surprise, the color he didn't have. Blonde, radiant, with the gift to turn a dinner into a magazine event. Her Instagram wasn't just social media. It was currency, her certificate of social validation. Connor, in his tailored suits, was the silent sponsor of her luxury lifestyle, the restrained smile that guaranteed stability. He didn't love her passionately. He loved the status she gave him. Blake showed up with a worn backpack and the faded charm of someone who lived entirely on broken promises. He wasn't just a failed musician. He was a pseudo-intellectual who criticized Connor's bourgeois capitalism while waiting for his brother to pay his bills. Ashley praised him in front of Connor. "Blake has soul. He's a free spirit." Connor saw the looks, the lingering touches, the inside jokes. But his mind, trained to optimize and ignore noise, refused to process it. It was easier to keep perfection on paper and on Instagram than face the chaos of betrayal. The truth was an unacceptable system failure. 3 years and 6 months. The lie lasted just long enough for Connor to forget that spreadsheets can't protect your heart. Powerful call to action 1. Final. Narrator. No one warned him. The truth was in front of everyone, and he was the only one who didn't see it. I'm asking you, is loyalty worth it anymore? If you believe in loyalty above everything else, like and comment honesty. Are you ready for the fall? What happened at 2:42 p.m. will shock you. Watch the next chapter and subscribe to see the plot twist. Tuesday, 2:42 p.m., River Oaks. Connor was heading to a business meeting when his phone buzzed. Not his secretary, a simple text from a friend. Get home. It's over. He drove in deafening silence. The BMW, once a symbol of control, now felt like a coffin. His normally sharp mind entered failure mode, processing information at a glacial speed. He parked and climbed the stairs without rushing, almost like he was running through a boring routine. The bedroom door was open, an ironic invitation. Ashley and Blake were there, naked. The scene wasn't passionate. It was shameless, disrespectful. "Connor," Ashley whispered, pulling the sheet. It wasn't remorse. It was irritation at being caught. Blake sat up in bed with the arrogance of someone who had the right. "Dude, it's not what it looks like." Connor didn't yell, didn't break anything. Rage sat heavy in his chest, but his corporate discipline saved him from the spectacle. "It's exactly what it looks like," he answered with icy calm. He grabbed a backpack from the closet, threw in enough for 3 days, and headed downstairs. Ashley followed, but now her tone was panic over losing security, not him. "Where are you going? Deep down you always knew I was after your money. What do I do now?" Blake tried to follow, but Connor stopped him with a look that destroyed his brother without touching him. Connor left the house. The BMW became his isolation chamber. His phone buzzed for hours. Friends, his mother. Everyone offering support. Everyone complicit in the silence. He finally understood. It wasn't just romantic betrayal. It was a family conspiracy that used his predictability as a weapon. The only honest answer was to erase himself. Connor drove all night with no destination, fueling himself with cheap coffee and solitude. By the next day, the decision was formed with the same clarity as a business plan: disappear. He sold the BMW and bought an old pickup truck. He transferred what money was left to a secret account, a remnant of his paranoid precaution. He hired a lawyer for the divorce with one instruction: no direct contact with Ashley or Blake. 3 weeks later, he was in Blanco, Texas. He bought the most inhospitable property he could find, abandoned farmland with a house barely standing. $45,000 paid in cash. The price was proof that there was no romance here, just the worst place to start over. That first night, Connor sat on rotting floorboards. He didn't cry over what he'd lost: the house, the wife, the car. He cried over the illusion of control he'd kept for 20 years. His tears shook his whole body, purely cathartic. By dawn, the crying had stopped, replaced by an unsettling emptiness. For the first time in his life, Connor Mitchell had no email to answer, no quarterly goal to meet, no plan. He was free, but didn't know what to do with it. It was like a reformatted computer waiting for a new operating system. And that freedom without direction, ironically, became his salvation. The first 6 months were silent punishment. He repeated the ritual of success: 5:30 a.m., black coffee, but the day was filled with meaningless tasks. Cleaning the same yard, fixing fences that led nowhere. He wasn't clinically depressed. He was rebooting. The turning point came with Ray Patterson, a retired veterinarian, his neighbor 2 acres over. Ray didn't ask questions. He just showed up with a toolbox and started fixing the abandoned fence. Connor watched, then joined him in silence. Ray taught him about wood and land. "A man needs purpose," Ray said, his only life philosophy, even if it's just keeping a fence standing. Connor, with his obsessive precision, found a new project: goats. He bought 50 dairy goats. They weren't efficient. They were loud, demanding, and delightfully not corporate. They forced him to be present, to be useful not for metrics, but for biological necessity. Ray brought a book on artisanal cheese. Connor dove into fermentation with the same intensity he'd once given marketing reports. The first batch was a disaster. The second, worse. But in the 3rd month, Ray tasted a piece and smiled slowly. "This is too good to stay here." Connor wasn't looking to sell, just to make. But that night, he put 5 cheeses in a basket and went to the farmer's market in Blanco. The first cheese sold in 47 minutes. Success now tasted like salt and milk. 17 months later, Sarah Chun, a documentary producer for a Netflix series about life rebuilding, arrived at the Blanco Farmers Market. She wasn't impressed by the cheese. She was impressed by Connor's indifference to attention. He was the only subject who didn't want to be discovered. Connor agreed to an interview just for Ray. He told everything without his corporate filter. The betrayal, the silence, the panic, the goats. The series, Buffalo Mountain, How Betrayal Became Breakthrough, premiered in August and went viral, hitting 47 million views in a week. Offers came: publishers, podcasters, major distributors. Connor turned down most of them, afraid of slipping back into showing off. It was Ray who got him to accept a Whole Foods deal, a guaranteed $1.2 million annually for Buffalo Mountain artisan cheese in 400 stores. In 6 months, Connor was a millionaire, not from greed, but from the authenticity of his product. His Instagram grew to 2.3 million followers not because of him, but because of photos of his goats and honest work. But Connor didn't expect the past to come back. In month 18 after the series dropped, he started getting messages. Blake from prison and Ashley desperate for contact. Connor applied the final lesson of his life. The most powerful response is silence. He blocked them both without reading the messages. He'd learned, the most effective revenge isn't something you chase. It's the life you build in sharp contrast to those who underestimated you. 2 years later, Blake Mitchell got out of prison after serving 18 months for fraud. The eternally failed artist had no band anymore, no money. He tried to reconcile with Connor 23 times. He was blocked. He tried to visit the farm. Ray gently but firmly turned him away. Blake got a job in a warehouse. He'd occasionally see news about Connor's success. Buffalo Mountain cheese featured in Bon Appetit. His fall wasn't financial. It was losing the narrative that he was a free spirit. He just became what he always was, a man with no roots. Ashley watched the series. She saw herself described not with anger, but with cold facts. The public didn't attack her, they simply erased her. She lost her job, her Instagram, her social circle, the only value she'd ever truly had. She moved to San Antonio. The emptiness she felt was the same Connor had felt on that Tuesday, but she didn't have a farm's purpose to fill it, just regret over a life with no substance. Connor, unshakable, married Sophia Reeves, a biologist he'd met at an agricultural conference. She moved to the farm. Together they expanded into agritourism. They had a daughter, Lily. Connor would teach her about genuine loyalty. Ray Patterson received a share of Buffalo Mountain's profits, becoming the silent partner and Lily's grandfather. He was the family Connor had built out of necessity, not blood. 3.5 years after the original series, Netflix released a special, Where Are They Now? Connor's success was proof. The trauma didn't define him, but it forced him to find his own authenticity. He wasn't a healed man, but a whole man. The control he'd lost in Houston was traded for a real and imperfect life in the Texas Hill Country.